So we'll have the interviewer Suzanne Orchard, who also works for STIR, and then we'll have the different people speaking, and there will be time for Q&A from about 20 to the hour. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Suzanne.
Thanks so much, Nicola. Welcome, everybody. So, membership organisations, how? Joined by a fantastic panel, and I'll let them open up a little bit more about who they are and what they do. But just briefly, we've got John Atherton to my right here from the Workers' Co-op Federation, Federation of Worker Co-ops and Employee-Owned Organisations. We've got Liz Misen to my left here from the Bristol Cable, a local media co-op, and Richard Dawes just at the end there from CoMedia, a live entertainment venue. So fair bit of diversity up here in terms of the sectors that you are representing, but all using a similar model in terms of the membership organisation model. So we're absolutely going to talk about how and listen to those journeys, but I think it's important to crack open a little bit about the why as well. I feel like we're living in a time where groups no longer really set up membership organisations, sort of more, loose associations. And what is a membership organisation? Is it the gym? Is it the National Trust? Is it the library? So we're going to delve into a bit of that as well and put a little bit more meat on the bones about what it actually is and who the members are. So enough from me. I will hand over to John. If you could just take a couple of minutes and just tell us who you are and where you're from. Like blind date, isn't it?
So, John Atherton. I've been working on Workers.coop for about 2 years now. As you said, it's a federation, so we're a membership organisation of mostly worker co-ops. I'm based up in Rochdale. I'll obviously go into the details of that later, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. Liz.
Hi everybody, I am Liz Misen from the Bristol Cable. I'm the strategy lead, which is a very sort of fancy way of saying that I try and plan for the future, our sustainability and sort of raise money in order to make sure that we have sustainability for the future. And I've been with the Cable on staff for a couple of years now, but I have been a member of the Cable since the very beginning. So I've been around for its whole 10 years very pleased to be part of the membership as well as part of the staff, and I'm based here in Bristol.
Hi there, my name's Richard Dawes. I'm one of the 209 owners actually of CoMedia Bath, which is a live entertainment venue built off the model of a live entertainment venue we've run for 30 years in Brighton called CoMedia, and we took the decision to transition our own limited company into a cooperative, into the mutual model in 2017. It was a route that no one had ever seen a business like us take. Many pubs have taken that route, but usually through the landlord wanting to leave, we wanted to actually run the live entertainment venue with the community of Bath, and we've demonstrably done so since then. So hopefully we'll be able to tell you a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll try and unpack some of that. So, John, just back over to you again. Could you tell us a little bit about the Federation, about the reasons why you felt the need to step into that space, what the gap was, and a little bit about why you chose the membership organisation model?
Yeah, so we are a federation of enterprises, of worker co-ops, and they are all co-ops themselves. So to be honest, it wasn't really a conversation. There was just an assumption from the start that we would also be a co-op, and therefore we would also have members, because you have to have members in a co-op. So we kind of jumped straight into that. Well, obviously, we'll have members. I suppose to dig a bit deeper into it, the other thing about Workers.coop is it's absolutely grounded in both being a decentralised network of these organisations and supporters and entities themselves and how we bring them together, but also rebuilding and being a movement. And so when you're talking about movement building, you're talking about being member-led and driven by these members and them doing, to be frank, most of the work. Inevitably, that's a very deep relationship, both financially, because they both are the input and the output of the finances, but also culturally and why we exist. So because of those deep relationships, again, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to have a membership and a very structured and organised membership, because it's kind of it's the kind of DNA of the whole thing. So that's why we're a membership organisation. Why did we set up? I suppose, so in the co-op movement, if you don't know it, Co-ops UK is kind of the national umbrella body for all co-ops, and then most specific sectors, housing, credit unions, etc., have their own federation, their own specialist body, whereas worker co-ops didn't. And so essentially the why is, well, everybody else has their own federation for their specific sector, why don't we? And so that's where workers.coop kind of came out of, and that's the kind of niche it fits. Essentially, if you're a freelancer or a worker looking to set up your co-op, join us. That's the kind of pitch.
Thanks, John. Same question to you, Eliz.
So I suppose to talk a little bit about why the Bristol Cable was set up as a co-op organisation, we have to hark back to the heady days of the beginning of this century, when tabloids were hacking everybody's phones. Don't know if you remember that. There was a whole inquiry about it, and the inquiry, Leveson inquiry, went on sort of 2011, 2012, and so at the beginning of the 2010s, there was definitely a real feeling that, you know, in the UK, trust in the press was just generally really, really low. And that was the kind of environment that the cable came out of. So the cable was launched in 2014. The people who launched it were recent graduates at university, and they had had an experience in community organising. And so they thought, well, you know, everybody hates the papers right now, and why don't we start a paper that is owned by local people? And certainly at the time, and still today, the crisis of funding in journalism, which is related, you know, to the rise of the internet and of social media, and there's lots of stuff to talk about there, and that's a different panel. But particularly hard hit were local newspapers and local media organisations, and so they decided to start a local media co-op, and that became the Bristol Cable, and it was funded originally by 100 people. So they did a crowdfunder, they got 100 people to back it, and over 10 years we've grown that to 2,500 members. So we're now owned by 2,500 people. There was very much, you know, a gap for investigative journalism at the local level, and unfortunately we're still one of the very few local investigative outlets around the country. There aren't many of us. You know, what I think it means for us to be a membership organisation is that people can trust us because they own the paper. We have an annual general meeting every year where we can put large organisational questions to the membership and say, last year, for example, one of our questions was, what do you want our tone of voice to be? You know, do you think that we should be more tabloid? Do you think we should be more broadsheet? Or do you think we're kind of getting it right, you know, down the middle? And so if people kind of don't like the way that we're doing things, they can vote to change it. And I think that's really important when you've got, I think the last research that I saw recently was that 13%, 1-3, of the country says that they trust journalists. And that is one of the lowest rankings for industries. For any industry, across the country. So, you know, the whole premise of journalism is that it's supposed to be trustworthy, factual information. And of course, there's room for opinion. Of course, there's room to, you know, take a stand on something that is based on values. But I think it is a shame that, you know, we've been around for 10 years, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have really improved as a sector generally. So that's really the gap that we're trying to fill, and that we've been filling for 10 years, and we hope to do another 10 years.
And do you, just a wee question for you, Liz, do you feel like in going down the route of using a membership organisation, you are managing to build trust in journalism in Bristol again?
I think so. I mean, I think that, you know, with any newspaper, people have I should call us a media co-op really, because we do have a newspaper, but we're also online and, we do podcasts and things. I think with any media organisation, there are going to be some people who like what you do, there's going to be some people who don't like what you do, and that's fine. But I do I do know that when we get feedback from our members, primarily, the main thing that they say is that they trust our journalism and they know that it needs financial support and they want to support it. So I think, not every single person in the city is going to see the cable and go, I'm definitely going to support you, because they might have, slightly different view on things. We've taken a stance, for example, on housing. We've said really clearly that we believe that the way that landlords treat tenants in the city needs to be better regulated and things like that. So it might be that there are some people that don't like that, but we think it's factually accurate. We can back that up with stats and research and information that we have. So we're happy to take that stance, and we've done a couple of campaigns. For example, we managed to convince the council to stop using bailiffs when people were in council tax arrears, not through no fault of their own. It wasn't that they were choosing not to pay or trying to game the system. It was that they genuinely had recently become unemployed or something like that. They couldn't pay their council tax anymore, so we got them to stop using bailiffs in those circumstances. So we are a campaigning newspaper, and I think there are some people that are going to take issue with that. But the people that do support us say that they support us because they trust what we're doing.
Great, thank you. Richard, over to you. From a entertainment industry perspective, could you tell me about what the gap was, what the opportunity was, and why you chose a membership organisation?
Yeah, so the why we became a member organisation was largely down to sort of a necessity. We had a need. The reason we opened a second venue is we'd created what we felt was a self-regenerating, self-sustaining arts centre in the middle of Brighton. It was part of the cultural fabric of that city. We felt it added to the sum of human happiness, and we wanted to open another one. We thought we could do it on our own. We opened the Bath venue in 2008, and we ran it for about 7 or 8 years, trying to run it as a satellite operation to the Brighton venue. And what we realised over that period of time is that it was never going to work unless it was totally knitted in to the city and knitted into the culture of the city, and we couldn't do that remotely. We couldn't do it on our own. So we actually went out to the city and said, look, if you want this venue to stay here, then we'd be happy to run it. We think we're doing a good job in terms of the offer, in terms of how we treat artists, how we treat our audiences, and the shows that we actually put on. But if you come on board, then the likelihood of the venue becoming resilient, and also building a model that outlives me, as I was a 50% shareholder, come up with a model that allows the building that we were occupying to be an arts provider and a home for the arts of that city for perhaps maybe the next 100 years. It was a cinema for the previous 100 years, so it seemed like the best model. And the ultimate sort of democracy of that was the city made its choice. It invested in us, so we raised £379,000 as a rough estimate, and we got the backing of Big Society Capital and Triodos Bank, and created that model.
Thank you, Richard. Back to you, John. Could we talk a little bit about how far into your journey how it's going, and are your members, are they getting what they need from it?
Yeah, so we started about 2 years ago at a festival, not dissimilar to this actually, called the Worker Co-op Weekend, where essentially about 35 people in a barn had loads of flip chart papers around lots of small groups, and they basically co-designed what their perfect federation would look like, their vision for the future. So that's kind of where we started, and quite rapidly, because I say we're a democratic work in progress. In effect, it's absolutely democratic. It's absolutely member-led. We have and will make lots of mistakes because of that, and we're learning all the time. And so we initially started with a very sociocratic, really decentralised structure, and these organic groups of people basically just got shit done. They set up websites, forums, registered domain names, started doing a comms and brand strategy, chose a name for the organisation, which is why it's workers.coop, and loads of other things. And it was very vibrant and very exciting, and that's what you need, I feel, at the start of any sort of movement building exercise. But I would say now that we're kind of two years in, we're now taking stock of that chaotic organising and trying to bring a bit more refinement and structure to what we're doing. And so, 2 years on, how are we? We have a membership of 90 organisations. We've raised around £200,000. It has to be said, virtually none of that from none from mainstream grant funders. Shout out to Civic Power, the only people who gave us any money outside of the worker co-op movement. But we've raised £200,000. And what do? We've got a co-op conversation line, so anyone, anywhere can have a conversation with one of our supporters about what is a worker co-op, how do you set one up, and that service is manned by volunteers, by our supporters. We've run training, webinars, peer networks. We run an event, like I say, not dissimilar to this. So we're binding those organisations, those worker co-ops together into a movement. But I think the thing we're really cognizant of is that takes time. Movement building is a very, very long-term thing. And so would I wish we were a lot further on? Of course I would. Well, I'm just one of many people involved in this organisation.
So you mentioned there's some perhaps some barriers to funding, or alluding to barriers. Could we unpack that a little bit and just tell me, are they model-specific barriers? What?
Yes and no. So legally we're a co-op society, but we are a not-for-profit asset-locked co-op society, but to some extent that puts some people off. We're not charitable. You know, the whole point of our organisation is to give people more money and more wealth and generate wealth for those people, and so they are not exploited by, blah, blah, blah. So when you actually get into a conversation with a funder and they kind of go, oh, we kind of like what you're doing, but that doesn't sound very charitable. And it's like, no, it's not really. But these people are not exploited in the workplace. These people are generating wealth themselves. So most funders are not interested. That's just the way it is. And equally, we're not specifically place-based and we're not specifically demographic-based. So we kind of want to work everywhere with everyone. And so again, a lot of funders are saying, oh, well, would you work in... I also work in Preston. Preston's great. There's loads of money you can get in Preston, but working UK-wide, not so much. So in essence, and we've applied, most grant funders are just not interested. So the majority of our income has come from membership subscriptions and from individual donations, either from an entity called the Solidarity Fund, which is made up of now 400 people who individually donate to support worker co-ops, and other essentially higher net worth individuals who've donated larger amounts of money. And that's basically how we financed our work so far.
Thanks, John. Eliz, back to the original question. Where you're at in your journey? How's it going?
Thank you. Sorry, I was just taking notes on the things that you said sneakily there. So yes, it's going well. Where we are at, in our journey now, is that we are doing a big membership drive. So basically the paper is raising money at the moment through membership income, and we have a bonus grant at the end of that. So we have a deadline of August 31st. We need to raise our membership income by £60,000. We've got it to about £45,000-ish now. And so we're basically just campaigning. We're always kind of in campaigning mode at the moment, and trying to bring in more members, and also trying to bring in more members at higher amounts. So we used to have a sort of average contribution of about £3.50, and I think our average contribution now is about £6.50, just because I think our comms have been better. We've been really explaining to people that we need money in order to survive, and so we've managed to do quite a good job of communicating that over the last year, since we started campaigning. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
Thank you. And just tell me a little bit about your membership. What are they getting for being a member? That's one of the interesting things we were talking about before the panel, actually, was that we've sort of incentivized higher contributions from members by offering more member benefits. So the only thing that we used to offer was at
£3 a month, we would send you the paper to your door. So you'd get it through your letterbox. And that was the only sort of offer for a certain amount of money. And we realised that we were sort of incentivising against us, really, against ourselves, because the vast majority of people paid £3 a month because that's what we advertised, and that was sort of what we were encouraging. And so what we decided to do was offer a number of different benefits. So you can get the paper through your door, and you can get the newsletter, and you can get, many other things at £5 a month. And then all of those benefits again with a couple more things at £10 a month. And we also introduced a patron membership tier. So, for those people who do have a lot of wealth or are high net worth individuals who can afford to pay and to sort of subsidise other people's memberships, we sort of said, if you're able to pay something like £1,000 a year or more, you can become a patron member, and we will then give you all of the member benefits, but also the warm, fuzzy feeling of sustaining journalism long into the future. And we also said that we would write an impact report for those people about, what their money had helped us to do, and really trying to invest a lot of that money also into diversifying our revenue streams, so that people who are giving us, a huge amount of money in membership are actually genuinely supporting the future of the organisation in quite a tangible way. So I think they are getting member benefits when people support the cable, but also they're getting investigative journalism that they really weren't getting before. We do have quite a few media outlets in Bristol. There is obviously the Bristol Post, which used to be the Bristol Evening Post, and that's been around for quite a while. They do some, pieces of investigative reporting here, and they have some great reporters, but they do also carry a lot of what a lot of people would call clickbait. They have a lot of pop-up ads, and people really don't like that. There's also Bristol 24/7, which is a sort of cultural magazine, which does kind of local reviews and event listings and things like that. There's the Voices Network, which is sort of like a pamphlet that is very hyper-local, so it's really at the neighbourhood level in Bristol. There's one for Filton, there's one for Bishopston. And so, there is a sort of quite a lot of choice, I suppose, of media in Bristol, but what people weren't getting was in-depth investigations that really held people to account, held the council to account, held local landlords, local businesses, any kind of organisation that was doing something slightly nefarious, holding them to account. So that's what we're able to provide by being a membership organisation.
Thank you. Richard.
So, where we are on the journey, I might as well just start at where we started on the journey, because clearly we knew nothing of membership organisations, so we spoke to people who did. I heard Dave Boyle mentioned in the last session. Dave Boyle, one of the leading experts on community shares, helped guide us through with crowdfunder.co.uk. And then we talked to the city. We talked to people in the city like Bath and West Community Energy, or Oliver, who I see on the front row, who was at that point looking after the football club who transitioned into a community-owned entity, and the Bell, quite a famous music venue pub in Bath that had successfully transitioned. And I think one of the things that was said to us quite early, because there was a worry that if you ask people to get involved, you'll end up with some mass sort of room of people and everyone trying to make decisions on what acts you put on what nights. And I think Oliver actually summed it up to us in the meeting. He said, look, you're not asking people to run the venue for you. You're asking people to invest in the venue, so a group of experts who understand the industry can deliver what they want to have in their city. And clearly they are shareholders, and they can have a view on that through the proper processes at an annual general meeting, and then things can run as they would normally do in a larger organisation. Say even a PLC would be operated like that. So an executive management team running the business, and then reporting back to its owners, which in our case are the members. Since we've operated, we've had our first AGM, very bizarrely, we transitioned into a community benefit society 26th of March 2019. We had 1 year of trading until COVID. That proved the model. We then stepped into COVID, but therefore our first AGM was during COVID. Our second AGM was sort of during COVID. Our trading was all over the place. So it was a bit sort of unordinary at that instance. But what we found, we probably had about 4 AGMs now, and it's settled down to a group of shareholders, members who are engaged and supportive, 20 or 30 maybe, who we'd know by name and recognise and chat to the venue regularly. There's a lot of silent investors who literally put their money in because they wanted the venue still to be there and they want us to exist. In fact, we had the wonderful idea that we could pay a return on investment because we made a profit. A very interesting thing to do in the arts, but we did that and we went out to our members and said, well, we've made a profit, you can have your 3% return on investment, and then having to couch that with but if you'd rather just leave it in the organisation, then please do that. And to be honest, almost everyone did. Most people decided at that point to say, we never want any return on our investment at all. All we want to do is to see the venue survive and be there. I suppose some of that's sort of clouded or informed by the fact that we've actually delivered on our business plan. And I know from my previous businesses, everyone said, if you get an investor, everything's fine until things aren't going quite right, and then the board meetings take a bit of a different turn. But our AGMs have all been good, and I do think a lot of that is down to the model that we had working wasn't spiraling out of control. It just wasn't that profitable. It wasn't self-sustaining, and the idea that you've suddenly got 200 and odd invested members. We had donors as well, so we had about 500 people throw money into our organisation. They all became stakeholders in the organisation, so they are all looking at the programme. They're all having their significant birthdays. They're all bringing their Christmas parties to the venue. They're all advocates for the venue, and that's what made the difference, and that's what got us into a point that makes it a profitable organisation. And the other thing that was incredibly useful as well when COVID happened is that the cultural recovery grants came out, and grassroots music venues, Spit and Sawdust, Black Rooms around the country, had to sit down and try and write down what their benefit to society was, what their raison d'etre was, what they added, to their communities. And we'd already done that, so we actually cut and pasted our share offer document into the cultural recovery grants, and people who made those decisions could easily quantify why it makes sense for us to exist. So it's been helpful on so many points, and I think when we entered it as well, we were told, and this was all pre-COVID, that cooperative model is more resilient. And I think we found that out, and if I've got one thing that I'd like to do, and is sort of spread the word, because I look at cities and towns around the country and think everyone should have its own flourishing arts centre, live venue where people can do shows, put on shows, and just for, even if it's a cover band, just to be able to do things within their community, and I don't see that people can do that from the private sector anymore. I don't think it's very financially viable. Councils cannot do it. They're so strapped for cash, and they do not have the skills base to do it. And I see the cooperative model pulling a community together. Basically, if you've got 200 or 300 people who want to make it happen, you should be able to make it happen.
Richard, can you tell me a little bit about the membership and what they're getting for being a member?
Yeah, so the original sort of investment was we had rewards, so people could have a number of free tickets, and they get a 3% return on their investment. I don't think everyone took their free tickets. We do know, because of course we can track what tickets people are buying. We know they come. We know they come regularly, and in fact we did quite recently. One of the members said, "Oh, I thought we were supposed to get discount on drinks," and we realised that our card had lapsed, so they get a 10%, might even be 20% discount on drinks, which actually nowadays is quite healthy. But that's about it. But I don't think people are generally driven by the rewards. They're just driven by the existence of the organisation.
Staying on the theme of membership, John, could you tell me a little bit about the membership of the Federation, and what kind of decisions are they involved in? What kind of decisions do they make?
Yeah, so we have two types of members. We have organisational membership, so worker or freelancer co-ops, And we also have worker membership. So that's basically anybody who gives their labour to the co-op. So essentially, there's about 3 paid workers. The vast majority are supporters, are effectively volunteers. So we have those 2 types of members. What do they do? So mostly organisational members, it's the bog standard, come to the AGM, nominate, because they can nominate directors, elect directors, that sort of structural hard governance sort of stuff, whereas anybody within their worker co-ops can also essentially give their time as supporters and get involved in the good stuff, the kind of soft governance stuff. So from that side of it, essentially, effectively everything's member-led. So we have, for example, a communications group made up of, I think, about 6 or 7 people, mostly from creative or web tech co-ops. So their day job is comms or creative work, and they basically run our branding, our comms, our merch, if you've seen any of our merch around. And so basically members are making those sorts of tactical decisions about where we're spending our budget, how we're campaigning, that sort of thing. Another example would be we have a member learning group, and that's, again, mostly people involved in education or co-op development who are getting together and essentially spending the budgets on how we're doing our co-op support. So what webinars we should be doing, if we're doing peer networks, on what topics and how, that sort of thing. So members get involved in the hard governance, but actually we're finding that people mostly want to get involved in is that sort of tactical stuff. What are we actually doing? And that we're quite unique in that way. And I know a lot of organisations just couldn't do that. I think we can do that because our members are worker co-ops, and they get that their workers want to get involved, and so a lot of them do give time within their business hours, I'm assuming, to spend a little bit of time supporting us. So that's how members get involved.
Thanks, John. Same question to you, Eliz.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course I can. So a little bit about your membership. Who are the membership and what kind of decisions they're involved in?
Yes, sorry. So our membership, completely understandably are people in Bristol. And we actually did a bit of a survey recently of because we have a membership database, and we took all of the people that have the paper delivered to them, and it turns out that 92% of the people who are members of the Cable are based in Bristol. So we do actually have 8% of our membership based outside of Bristol, and a lot of those people are people who used to live in Bristol but have moved away and want to kind of stay up to date with what's going on. And then a few of them are people who are, for example, really love local journalism, like what we're doing, like our model, and want our model to sort of expand around the country. And so they're just supporting us and helping us to become sustainable so that we can grow. And that's our aim long term, is to make a model that is replicable and sustainable, so that it can be replicated around the country. And in terms of our AGM and the kinds of organisational decisions that we ask the members to make, I'll give you a few examples of things that we've asked in the past. So, for example, we have asked before about our tone of voice. I think I mentioned that earlier. We've asked, should we apply for this big grant from Google, or do you want us to avoid big tech money? To our surprise, the members said, yeah, go for it. Just, you can get that money from Google, use it for good. We applied for the grant, we didn't get it. And then other things that we've asked are, do you want, something that you were saying earlier was, do you want to be involved in more organisational decisions throughout the year, or is what we're doing every year at the AGM fine? And the members said, yeah, that's fine. We want you to go and do the work. Please stop giving us work to do. So that was good for us, because, it's much more efficient for us to just run the paper and to kind of consult rather than trying to bring people in, really regularly. That is very difficult to do. And so we're asking not, what stories should we run this week? We're asking, what types of stories should we run? What themes do you want us to run generally? Or a kind of sense check of, have the stories we've been running been meeting your expectations? Does our reporting meet your standards? And so we ask bigger, wider questions so that we can reflect reflect every year with our membership and see, you know, are we getting it right? Do we need to pivot slightly one way or the other? So that's the way that we really involve our members in what we're doing.
Thanks, Eliz. John?
Richard.
So sorry.
It's okay. I'm very forgettable. So, well, in terms of members, I mean, we have a board, and we had the ability for people to put their hand up and have an election. It was never particularly stiffly contested. We were quite happy if we had enough people to come in, and we actually tried to convince a few of the members who had relevant experience to join in and give their skills. So we convinced and we co-opted members. So the lead partner in the law firm, Stone King, who helped us with the transition through the Financial Conduct Authority. We got the Vice Chancellor of Bath Spa University on the board, and also at the board meetings, at the AGM meetings, we've had some good engagement, good suggestions from members. I mean, one of the problems we've got is that our membership is quite old and affluent, and we're a venue that entertains across the board. I mean, if you went into Bath and asked the general cohort of students what we are, they'd say we're a student nightclub. So, and we want to sort of engage with lots more communities. In fact, we want to engage with communities who wouldn't come to our venue because they're the sort of the disenfranchised, the disempowered of society, and the ones who would benefit most from live entertainment. So those are sort of the challenges we've got at the moment. But we've got an active membership, and classically, you know, the 80-20 rule of, you know, 20% do 80% of the work. And not that we are expecting too much of our members, but we have a few enthused people. And then for us as a management team, our question is, what do we actually want from them? Mm-hmm. And we did have this with we had the Vice Chancellor of the University on the board, and after a year or two we said, well, he's done nothing for us. And we went and had a meeting with him in a very polite way, said, you've done nothing for us. And he said, you've never asked anything of me. And so eventually we came up with a partnership with them where they co-funded music events, which are now our free music festivals. And we have them about every quarter. People can come for free. They, as in the audience members, can come for free. All the bands get paid a good fee. The events themselves are absolutely bristling sort of, creative hotspots. And the only thing that Bath Spa University said is, can at least half of the bands have some sort of link to our establishment at some point in the past. So it's sort of them feeding into the creative community in the future, and that's worked incredibly well for us. In fact, we've even had some customers online saying, well, I think you should charge for these events, they're so good. And our answer to that is, well, that's not how they were set up. And also, by the way, please be reassured that all the acts are getting paid fully for what they do.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I think this membership engagement piece is interesting. There's definitely been a reoccurring theme, certainly from the last panel and from the series of study visits I've just hosted around West Yorkshire. This, difficulty to define what members want from being involved, and also harness that and get that kind of buy-in and traction. So I'm just going to ask Richard over here what he thinks. John, if there's anything you want to share with the audience around, what's been interesting, what's been successful in terms of approaches to membership engagement, what's just absolutely not worked, could you perhaps share your thoughts on that?
So it's the classic thing of keeping it as simple, quick and easy as possible. And so what's worked really well for us is very simple, very easy asks, where there's a very clear expectation and equally very clear results from that involvement. When you can do that works really well. That's just really hard. What doesn't work so well is one of our challenges has been when you get members together into working groups, some people want to be there to have big discussions and talk about policies and strategies and changing the world, and other people basically want to get some very specific practical things done. And so one of the things that didn't work was having thematic working groups that deals with strategy and tactics. And so we've essentially switched to having strategy groups where those who want to have the big discussions can do them, and then project groups for those who just want to get on and do a task. And that separation has worked so much better.
That's great. That's really good practical advice. Liz, same question.
We I suppose really, in terms of things that have and haven't worked, I would come back to the thing I said earlier about, asking for what you need. And, when we had a single member tier of £3 a month and we send the paper to your door, the vast majority of people paid £3 a month because they thought that that's what we really wanted from them. And we had always said, pay what you feel. It's always been lowest £1 a month, but no matter what you contribute, it is one member, one vote. And that remains. So that democracy remains, even though we've changed our member benefit tiers now. But when we started saying, guys, we need more money, could you, for example, pay £5 a month instead of £3 a month? We did a little bit of a survey using our membership system before we changed our membership tiers, and 82% of people said, yes, I would pay £5 a month. And so we thought, okay, this is a clear signal from the membership that they are willing to pay a little bit more. We also, made an ask throughout the campaign, more towards the beginning of the campaign, where we worked out that if every single member that we had paid £2 more a month than they were currently paying, we would have met our membership target overnight. We would have met our membership target immediately at the beginning of the campaign. 20% of our members have increased by £2 a month. Or more. And so we weren't able to convince everybody to do it, but we were able to convince a significant portion of our membership to give us more money, simply just by asking. So I think, don't be afraid of asking your membership for what you need. Obviously, don't assume that everybody is then going to go, yes, of course, I'll do whatever you say. But, it's really worth making clear what it is you need. And I would definitely second what you said, John, about, really feeling like... Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. I don't know what I was going to say. What did you just say? Making it clear to people. Making it clear and simple. Thank you. Sorry. Brain dump after a year of campaigning.
Richard.
So, things that have worked, it's given us a platform to actually do things that you wouldn't normally do if you were trying to run a live entertainment venue. If you went to the very basics of the maths and had an aggressive lender, then you would be open on a Friday and a Saturday night. You might be dark much of the week. We've got the platform to not have to worry existentially about our existence, because we have a business plan that works and a bank account with money in it, which I assure you, from running a live entertainment venue for decades before that, is a very rare position to get into. But it then allows us to, one example, I say we're known as a nightclub in Bath, where of course we're all things to everybody. But one thing we managed to become was a nightclub for adults with learning difficulties. So we spoke to Bath Mind, who work with people who are in care, and when they get to the age of 18, they fall out of that system and don't have a great deal of support, don't have a great deal that they can do. And also, they're not really, as a group of people, that confident to go out to a big, leery nightclub on a Friday night in a city centre. So we ran a night with Bath Mind called Uproar, which was ostensibly exactly the same club night, but just with a bit more care and the ability to take people to the taxi rank or the bus stop. We ran it in our small space once, and then the next time it moved into the bigger space, and we run that every quarter. We actually did it thinking we might have to get funding to do this, to underwrite it, but it washes its face, and it's the sort of thing we should be doing. It's the sort of thing venues should be doing, because you want to hit every sector of society. So it's given us a platform to do things that we wouldn't normally be able to do.
Thanks so much. Gosh, these sessions go so quickly. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. Okay, so we're going to open up to the floor for questions.
I'm just interested in. I volunteer at the Cube Cinema, which is a volunteer-run cinema, and I'm also a part member of the Exchange. I'm kind of interested in, has there been discussions, particularly around the arts centres, but also, I suppose, related to the federation model of how I've taken what you're doing, but also and replicating that elsewhere, but also using maybe assets that people have as part of possibly like a federation to leverage capital and the resource to bring more venues or more types of organisations back into sort of public, community ownership. Because it feels to me like this is a kind of move towards co-opting out of private into community, but it feels like a lot of people struggle to get that to happen, and I think finance is probably quite a big barrier to that, but also understanding how to do it and being supported to do it. So I just wondered if there's been discussions between like maybe like what you've done in Brighton and then replicating in Bath sounds like a really great thing, but could be done elsewhere as well.
Without a doubt, and we spoke to the Exchange just after we'd issued our share offer document, and we told them everything that we'd done wrong. They then issued their share offer document with the knowledge of our mistakes and managed to convert and succeed in their campaign quicker than we did. We had the Ultimate Picture Palace in Oxford came down to see us. In fact, we ended up doing almost a day session, a half-hour meeting turned into almost all the day. They disappeared off into the distance. COVID happened, and I assumed that they hadn't done what they successfully did. They transitioned their cinema into a very, very well-funded community-owned cinema. And I sort of agree with you. I'd be very happy if there's a way of providing some sort of framework to be able to allow community groups to do this on their own. But the most important thing is you do need some sort of some leaders within those communities to make it happen. You need those entrepreneurial sort of doers within those communities, because as we found, you can't do it remotely. You have to do it there. Within those cities. But at least now, the one hope we've got now is that we do have a government that might value the arts and might value community ownership.
Yes, so with the Federation, we have the workers.coop is very revenue, i.e. people pay their membership fees and we spend their membership fees on delivery. But we have a sister thing called Solid Fund, the Worker Co-op Solidarity Fund, where any individual anywhere can give £1 a week. Check out, Google it, solidfund.coop. And that money goes into a development fund, and that's essentially a fighting fund. So worker co-ops will get in touch with Solid Fund and say, we want to save our building, we've got a crisis, can we borrow £5,000? And that group of people will basically decide to spend their capital, which they've built up, on that sort of investment in worker co-ops. So yeah, the yin and yang works really well, we find, for that.
Thanks, John. Eliz, you've got something you'd like to share,
yes.
Announce,
I
plug?
I would like to do a final plug for membership of the Cable. I know that not everybody in this room is local to Bristol, so if you do know anybody in Bristol, please do grab some cables. There's some on the table just outside the doors here, and there's also some on the stall in the back. So please do tell everybody that you know in Bristol to become a member of the Cable before the end of our campaign deadline. And if you are local to Bristol and you're not already a member, please do become a member of the Cable. Now is definitely the time, and I'm very happy to answer any questions about it if anybody has any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've not got any time for any more questions, but please do take the time to seek out the panellists, continue the conversations with us, with them. Big round of applause for everybody up here.